Today, we're in Burlington, Iowa, which is a namesake city of the Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy Railroad, Burlington Northern, and of course BNSF. So this place is full of railroad history. While I usually rail fan without any specific catches in mind, this evening's different, because sitting in the yard is not one, but two back-to-back Santa Fe Bluebonnets. These two engines have been bouncing back and forth between Galesburg and southeastern Iowa for about 2 weeks now, pulling light power moves and low priority manifests, so of course I had to try my hand at catching them in action. However, they don't have a crew right now, but that's okay, because that gives us plenty of time to look at this. A classic SD9 in classic Southern Pacific Black Widow colors. This engine was made in 1954 for Southern Pacific before being sold to their subsidiary, the Northwestern Pacific Railroad. But after that company went under, this engine ended up in leaser service and now rests dead in tow here in Burlington. Dead in tow is an interesting designation. It means the locomotive's traction motors have been disconnected or isolated for transport purposes. Had the motors not been isolated, they could have created a detrimental braking force, similar to dynamic braking, while the locomotive was in motion, which could cause flat spots on the wheels or a fire if you're unlucky enough. 4324's been sitting here for over a year now. Hopefully it's just in storage and not awaiting a scrapper, because I can't see a reason why it wouldn't be operational anymore. Back at the bonnets, we see an awesome sight as a westbound coal drag approaches. This SD70 Ace makes for a fantastic EMD family portrait. 3 generations of special duty power wearing 3 iconic paint jobs. And just when you couldn't ask for anything better, a crew started to board 1755. It's always humbling to see people up close to locomotives, because even a medium-sized engine such as this SD40-2 is still absolutely massive compared to a person. These men will likely be on this train all throughout the night, and possibly into the early morning, since 12 hours is the standard length of a train crew shift. Right now, the crew's doing their preliminary checks, getting paperwork in order, communicating with dispatch, and untying the locomotives. When locomotives are stopped and left without a crew, they must be tied down, which means they must be put in auto start mode if required, and have their handbrakes set to ensure they don't roll away. Handbrakes are basically a train's version of a parking brake. On lots of newer engines, you can engage and disengage a handbrake with the simple press of a button. But these older EMDs likely have a manual setup. I know 1755 and 169 certainly do. And as for the auto start mode, that's done to keep the prime mover warm and ready to go, since cold starting these massive engines is a whole process in and of itself. And with everything in ship shape, 1755 and its group of engines started moving. We're about to see how the railroad makes a freight train from beginning to end. But first, the engines have to be on the right track. Now here's something interesting. Check out the signal aspect above 1755. It's flashing red under solid red. This must be a special aspect on BNSF, because I've only seen it in and around rail yards. Even though both lights are red, which would typically mean stop at all costs, the flashing one indicates a train is allowed to proceed. However, it must do so at a restricted speed. After backing way on up and having the boys in Fort Worth flip a switch, the Bluebonnet duo made their way to the other end of the yard so they could start building their train. This evening, they're making an M train, which is a low priority manifest that usually has a rather short route. You never know what you're going to get with M trains. Sometimes they have amazing power on the head end, like this one soon will, and other times they're led by normal road engines. Their length is also a toss-up. They might be as long as a normal freight train or have less than 10 cars. It all depends on what the railroad is calling for on any given day. But most of the time, they're about the length of a normal train. I think it's absolutely wonderful that we as rail fans can still see sights like this almost a quarter of the way through the 21st century. Who would have thought that nearly 30 years after BNSF was created, we'd still have classic Santa Fe Bluebonnets pulling revenue freight over the main line? I swear, railroads are just giant time capsules. Now, the switching can begin. Apart from the interesting locomotives, this train also had an interesting crew. Normally, a train crew consists of 2, sometimes 3 people, but today there were 4, and I ain't sure why. Maybe someone here is a trainee, or maybe a couple people here are deadheading. Deadheading means a train crew is just hitching a ride in order to get to their designated job site, and they don't do any work. After grabbing the first cut of cars, this EMD quartet pulled out of the yard in order to clear some switches. Unfortunately, after the locomotives disappeared around the curve, they didn't show back up for the rest of the switching process. But this ain't the last we're going to see of these Bluebonnets. Just you wait. For the rest of the evening, the train went back and forth, grabbing about 5 cuts of cars in total. This switching process is pretty bare bones, since all the cars are already sorted out. All the train has to do is pull forward, clear a switch, wait for the conductor to flip it, back on up, grab another cut of cars, and rinse and repeat until the train is made. After hooking up the last cut of tankers, the train was now complete, but it can't leave just yet. It needs to pull forward in order to clear a few more switches so they can be reset, and wait on clearance from dispatch. Since this is an M train, it's gonna take a back seat to a lot of other trains on this line, such as this empty westbound coal drag headed back to the Powder River Basin. Once the coal drag was gone, I tried to catch the Bluebonnets once again on their way out of town, since it was almost dark, but I was only met with the end of the train. The good news is that this ain't as big of a problem as it may seem, because we catch back up with the ATSF duo in Danville, Iowa, as they highball over the main line, with the last minutes of daylight barely poking over the horizon. And with the cool Midwestern night fast approaching, I decided to call it a day. Thanks for watching. If y'all enjoyed this video, consider checking out some other ones of mine. Also, maybe pass yourself by the merch shop. Anyways, till next time.